Now, into the ticket office of Disneyland.
Oh boy, let's do this. Don't think the CIA is going to be trying to hack your second-gen iPod.
I didn't think so. There might have been a lot of illegal music on there. I wouldn't doubt it. But, I mean...
You were supposed to bring death to the flagships, not join them.
Google has found a new way to piss me off.
iTunes is a constant source of embarrassment.
Behind-the-scenes camera crap.
May I present to you the cat?
I am the dog. I can't do it anymore without laughing. I was going to do the whole thing. Welcome, everyone, to the Calling All Platforms podcast. I am your host, Wes, and I'm here with Landon.
Hello.
And Caleb.
Yo.
And we're here to talk all things tech this week. And holy cow. We have some things to talk about. It's, as Landon pointed out before we started recording the show, I was right about one thing, because I'm usually never right about much. But one thing was, man, the calm before the storm, and
yeah,
it's hitting. It's hitting. So, well, we got some stuff to talk about, so let's fully get into this. Let's start off here. Looks like we have the Let Loose event.
Yep. So, listener, Apple doesn't know what the word event means. That's my conclusion after this week.
It was an infomercial.
It was. It was a 30-minute commercial for iPads. That's what it was. They just stood at a... It was Tim Cook and Martha Stewart. They just stood at a table, and Tim Cook just showed off everything that the iPads could do.
But wait,
and
there's
he used
more.
One to... Exactly. No.
That would have been cool. That would have been great.
It would have been better that way, honestly. I would have really enjoyed that. No, what it actually was a 30-minute video that posted to their YouTube channel, and it was, a bunch of information about updates to iPads, which is great. That's fine. Don't call it an event and send out media invites beforehand. That's just, I guess what makes it an event is that they showed it live. Well, they showed it as it aired, like originally, the premiere on YouTube happened. They had a bunch of media sitting in the Steve Jobs Theater that watched it as it was premiering. And then they got to go back behind the theater and get some hands-on time with the actual iPads. That's what makes it an event, apparently. So doesn't really do much for the rest of us watching it, but it does mean that we get hands-on videos a lot faster than we otherwise would. So I suppose that's the advantage. I will note that Tim Cook started out by introducing this as the biggest day for iPad since its introduction. And it came out shortly afterwards that there's no stickers in the box anymore.
What?
No stickers in the box, Tim. No stickers.
What? Is this like the first Apple product that doesn't come with a sticker?
It is not the first Apple product that doesn't come with a sticker. They took it out of, was it the iPhone last year? No. Was it the iPhone? Or was it like the MacBook Air? I can't remember. There is one other product that shipped before this that didn't have stickers, but everybody was kind of like, oh, this is probably just a one-off, or this. Nope, it's apparently they're getting rid of the stickers, and I'm never going to forgive them for this. So there you go. I'm no longer an Apple customer. That's it. I've been buying them for the stickers this entire time.
That's a really expensive sticker.
They're so pricey, but they're so nice. They're just really high-quality stickers.
My wife's MacBook Air, or the M2 one that we got, did come with a sticker, and it was like a silver sticker. It matched the color of the laptop, and it was beautiful.
Yeah. The color matched stickers were so good. Been doing that, and like I still have the stickers that came with my MacBook Pro back in 2011, and that was back in the day when if you bought an iPod, you got little tiny stickers.
Yeah.
If you bought like an iPhone or something like that, then you got medium-sized stickers. If you bought their laptops or their desktop computers, you got big honking stickers. They're like 3 inches across. I've got a couple of those still because like I can't bring myself to put them on anything because they don't sell those big ones anymore.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's the end of arguably the best era in Apple history known as the era in which you got stickers when you purchased their products. So that's the most important thing you need to know about this event. Otherwise, there were some new iPads. It was kind of boring. That's really all I have to say. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Okay. All right. So I have a script. I wrote myself a script here because as is typical with Apple events, there are a lot of details, but very few details that actually matter. So here you go, listener. This is the distilled version. The iPad Air. iPad Air now comes in both 11 and 13-inch sizes, and the big news is that it's bigger. The front camera is now landscape on both devices, which is the right location for that camera.
Correct.
And both iPads ship with the M2 processor and 8 gigs of RAM now over the M1. Hover support for the Apple Pencil has come down from the Pro series, and the lineup now starts with 128 gigs of storage and goes up to 1 terabyte of storage. iPad Air, the 11-inch, starts at 600 and 800 for the 13-inch. So that's the iPad Air. There's some slightly altered colors as well. They look nice. It's just a nice little spec bump over the last device with the camera in a better location.
It's more or less a previous generation iPad Pro.
Pretty much. In a lot of ways. Screens even, yeah, pretty much. All right. Now, the iPad Pro. A lot more going on here. First big news. The iPad Pro has gone OLED. But in order to conquer the brightness issues of larger format OLED panels, they're shipping one of the first mass market implementations of tandem OLED, which stacks 2 panels on top of each other for added brightness and reduced stress on the pixels, which should help with burn-in concerns. The new screens will do up to 1,000 nits of full screen brightness and 1,600 nits peak brightness for 1 point, which is impressive for an OLED of that size. Typically, like on TVs, like TV-sized OLEDs, and anything bigger than like a phone screen, OLEDs kind of tend to peak at 1,000 nits peak brightness, so this being that much brighter than that, pretty solid. Apple has branded, this tech Ultra Retina XDR, which is my latest nominee for Worst Tech Name of the Year. The displays can now be optioned with nano-texture glass on the 1 and 2 terabyte configurations of either size of the Pro iPads, which reduces glare, and iPadOS is going to include a reference mode for high color accuracy editing of photos and videos, which is pretty cool. The new iPads are powered by the M4, meaning that the entire iPad lineup is likely going to be skipping the M3, which leaves that chip the odd distinction of only having lasted about 6 months. The M4 features a new display engine to handle the tandem OLED panels. It has 4 power cores and 6 efficiency cores for a new base configuration of 10 cores, though based on rumors, there is going to be a slightly lower-end version of the M4 in other devices that will have 9 cores. That's still up from the base configuration of the M3, which had 8. It is going to include a 10-core GPU with dynamic mesh shading and ray tracing support, so following after the Pro iPhones from last year, and an updated neural engine with 16 cores that Apple claims is more powerful than any NPU in any AI PC, which is notable because Qualcomm and AMD have both announced processors with NPUs built in that have not hit the market yet. So Apple's claim is probably technically correct right now, might not be correct in like 3 months. So just something to be aware of. The M4 is supposed to be up to 50% faster than the outgoing M2 and last-gen iPad Pros and will match the M2's performance while using half the power. Thanks to these efficiency gains and an improved thermal design that will supposedly not choke the chip, the new iPads are thinner than last-gen. They're actually thinner than Apple's previous thinnest device, the last generation of iPod Nano. They're also lighter than the iPad Air models that were just announced. Do names mean anything anymore?
Nope.
The iPad Pro is thinner and lighter than the iPad Air. What does the Air mean? Nobody knows.
No.
The Pros also feature a fancy new flash for improved document scanning, as well as the landscape-oriented front camera and Face ID, finally. Storage options will range from 256 gigabytes to 2 terabytes, with configurations of 1 or 2 terabytes shipping with 16 gigs of RAM and lower configs shipping with 8. The 11-inch starts at $1,000, and the 13-inch starts at $1,300. So, the iPad Pro.
I did hear something about the M4 in these iPad Pros. Like, if you buy the base level iPad Pro versus a higher end level iPad Pro, the M4 chips are slightly different.
So the higher ones come with the larger amount of RAM, which I assume when you can get this on your laptop, you'll be able to choose an M4 with 8 gigs or 16 gigs of RAM. And then there have been Geekbench benchmarks that have been posted from an Apple Silicon processor that we're pretty sure is the M4, but it's advertising itself as having 9 cores instead of 10. There's some speculation as to whether or not that is, because right now the iPad Pros are on, like, you can pre-order them right now. They're going to be in customers' hands in like a couple of days. So we'll have confirmation of this in a couple of days. Speculation has been that those 9-core chips are just test, like, it's a future lower end model that is going to be in base model Mac Minis and stuff like that. But there's been some speculation that actually it could be that if you're getting the iPad Pro that has 256 gigs or 512 gigs of storage, you're getting a 9-core M4. And if you get 1 terabyte or higher, then you're getting the 10-core.
Yeah.
Apple specified in the event that it was going to be a 10-core CPU. So I feel like that would be kind of weird. But there is some confusion about that right now, based on these Geekbench scores that we've seen posted. So, not sure. We will find out for sure by the next time we record this podcast, listener. Like, we'll know for sure by next week.
Yeah.
But just so you know, yeah, there is a little bit of confusion there. We know that there is going to be a different M4 probably coming at some point. They're far enough along in development with it that it's in a machine that can run Geekbench. So, it probably will be hitting the market. It's just a question of whether or not that was an iPad that people were seeing or whether it was some other future Apple device with an M4 in it.
Right. I have a suggestion for the naming as well, for what they should do with iPads from now on. Because the Pros now are thinner and lighter than the Airs.
Yep.
Which in and of itself is very impressive for what is in the Pros.
Thinner than the iPod Nano.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing that blows my mind. Is like, okay, thinner than the Air, sure, whatever. But like those last generation iPod Nanos, 7th gen iPod Nanos, those things were like paper.
Yeah.
Oh, they were so thin.
Yeah.
And these things are thinner than that. I'm like, but there's like, and I thought it was really funny, actually, the MKBHD video about the event afterwards. And he's like talking about how, yeah, they're super thin and super light. And I'm sure that's not going to cause any problems for durability, as Jerry Rig Everything's face slowly comes on the screen. I was just like, yeah, he's going to break one of these things in half and it's going to be glorious.
Yeah, that's like every single, like, anything about this iPad. And when they talk about the thinness, they like, yeah, Zach's going to destroy this thing.
Oh yeah. It's like everyone's like, it feels super thin and like honestly kind of magical that it can be that thin and still like have a display and be a piece of electronics. But man, I'm not going to vouch for the longevity of this device. Like,
yeah, no. But so I think they need to do it because naming doesn't mean anything anymore in iPads or most Apple products or tech products in general.
True.
What they should do is they have the iPad Pro. There. That's done. That's fine. Then the iPad Air is now the iPad. And then, because that's the one they want to sell to everyone, that's the general good iPad that most people could be fine buying.
Yeah.
And then there's what is now the regular iPad, should be the iPad SE. It's the lower end model. It's got it's the total, if you take from the iPhone, like, it's the same naming scheme. You got the Pro phones, you got the regular phone, you got the SE, and it's like the same hardware configurations in the iPads. So you got the Pro, you got the regular, and then you have the SE. That's what they should do, and it makes a lot of sense.
Gosh dang it, Apple.
hire me.
This stuff is really easy. Well, and it's their laptops too, right?
Yeah.
MacBook Pro, that's fine. MacBook Air, that's fine. You just need to take that low-end version of the MacBook Pro that just has the M3 processor in it. Just call that a MacBook.
Call it a MacBook, yeah.
Just call it a MacBook. It's okay. You don't really even need to change the design that much, though I think they should change the design.
Yes.
Make it plastic and make it cheaper than the Air, but otherwise change nothing about it. It's just the same thing. I don't know. You could even take away the high refresh rate screen. Like, whatever. Just, I don't know. Apple. Speaking, actually, we'll move on. Speaking of terrible Apple names, let's talk about iPad accessories that were talked about at this event. Apple also announced a new Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pros, which is thinner, lighter, and color matched to the new Pro colors, now has a function row and a larger trackpad with haptics built in. It is, otherwise, still just an overpriced iPad keyboard that is a very nice keyboard, to be clear. It costs more than I feel like most people should spend for an iPad keyboard, but if you have a lot of money, this is probably the best iPad keyboard you can buy. So there you go.
True story.
Apple is really batting a high average with terrible branding this spring with the addition of the Apple Pencil Pro to their incredibly stupid product line of pencils. It now includes a pressure-sensitive barrel, haptic feedback motor, and gyroscope to detect barrel rotation, all of which should enable art apps to enable even more fine control for their users. It also now includes Find My integration, which is honestly a godsend. Really happy that's there. The Pencil Pro is, thankfully, the same price as the outgoing Pencil Gen 2 at $130, but it doesn't fully replace the second generation pencil since the magnet and charging layout for the thing seems to have changed given the cameras moving along the edges of the new iPads. So what that means is this has the effect of making the Pencil Pro only compatible with the iPads updated at this event. So,
yeah,
there you go. I will say that the pencil itself seems like a really nice update to the functionality that already existed.
Yeah.
But Apple Pencil Pro, that's awful, Apple. That's just awful. I hate everything about it.
I mean, they've already doubled down, quite literally, on the fact that they're going to have a pencil lineup, So now they just need to, if they're going to do that, which obviously they're going to continue on with this, they're not going to have one pencil that just does everything or even limits on certain devices based on software and hardware capabilities. Because they're not going to do that. But what they should do, again, is just have the Pro Pencil or Apple Pencil. I don't know. I mean, the Pro is still a bad name, but if they're going to do it that way. And then just a regular Apple Pencil. They don't need 4 different Apple Pencils that you can buy at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I will say it seems like going forward, what the plan looks like is that you've got your Pencil Pro, which is for the new iPads, like the new going forward iPads. You've got your $79 Apple Pencil, the cheap one that I still don't necessarily like, but given the context of this event, it makes a little bit more sense to exist. That's their normal Apple Pencil. You've got the second generation Apple Pencil, which is sort of like, this is the Pro Pencil for the older iPad Pros. If you've got an older iPad, you're getting last generation Pro. This is better than the $79 pencil. Not quite as good as the new one, but the new one doesn't actually work with your older iPad, so here's the older version for you. And so that one's just going to probably hang on until all of the iPads have been updated, and then they can stop selling that one. And actually, we'll get to my thoughts on the rest of that in a minute. I do want to mention iPad software really quickly. Final Cut Pro 2 and Logic Pro 2, which were released on iPad last year, the one versions of each of those were released. They announced 2 second editions for both of them. Those were announced. Final Cut is getting updates to enable support for editing directly off of external drives instead of off of the iPad internal storage, as well as supporting up to 4 live camera views from connected iOS devices. Logic has added AI session players with bass and keyboard players joining the AI drummer. I do really like their AI drummer. It's pretty cool. The bass and keyboard players are also probably pretty good. I just can't wait for them to come down to GarageBand. So, which
Yes.
will probably happen in about 2 years. That's my
Yeah.
guess. All right. So, my final thoughts on this event. In a final attempt to bring some semblance of order to their increasingly chaotic iPad line, Apple also announced that the 10th generation iPad now starts at $350, finally actually replacing the 9th generation as the cheapest iPad you can buy new. Nothing was confirmed at the event, but it seems likely that this does mean that the first generation Apple Pencil is going to finally die. And the latest in the ongoing trend of the iPad mini being the unwanted stepchild of the iPad line is that no, nothing was said about it at this event. Yes, you're right that it hasn't been updated since 2021, and no, probably don't expect that to change anytime soon. In Mark Gurman's latest newsletter from, honestly, this morning, he's predicting late 2024 or early 2025 at the earliest, with basically just a processor bump and very few other changes. So, the Pencil lineup is hopefully going to clean itself up as the older versions of the iPad kind of stop being sold. Then they can drop the second generation Pencil in addition to hopefully the first generation Pencil, which is Lightning enabled, which should be going away with the death of the last Lightning iPad, which was the 9th generation iPad. So that's gone. First gen Pencil should also be gone. Second gen Pencil is probably going to go away once they finish updating the 10th. Well, actually, no, probably. They could honestly ditch it as soon as they stop selling new versions of last-gen iPad Pros. That's when they can get rid of that. And then, yes, we'll have the regular Pencil and the Pencil Pro. So it's hopefully going to clean itself up a little bit. And yeah, the iPad mini, just poor thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel bad for it, but
it's always been the redheaded stepchild of the iPad family. Like,
yep.
They had the iPad, like when they first came out with the mini, everyone loved it. It was great. I had 2 of them. I've still got them. They're great. Well, not anymore. The ones I have are the first gen and second gen. They're not that great anymore. But either that size, that form factor was great. And a lot of people still love that size and form factor. And then the latest update was just updating it to the newer, like flat edges and stuff to match the iPad Air and stuff, which is nice. But yeah, like you said, they haven't done anything to it in far too long. I mean, they didn't do anything with iPads at all last year, which is odd in and of itself, but the mini needs an update.
I think they were probably waiting on the M4. That's why we didn't see any updates last year, is because they really wanted to have the thinnest devices ever with these new iPad Pros, and they couldn't do that with the M3. They needed the M4 for that. And I buy that. And, oh my gosh, what a great thing to throw at anybody who tries to eulogize the Lightning port. Because one of the main arguments for people who, for a decade, were like, no, Apple can't switch their iOS devices to USB-C because then they'd have to make them thicker because the Lightning port is thinner than a USB-C port. I would just like Exhibit A, the 13-inch iPad Pro here that is 5 millimeters thick. It's thinner than the previous thinnest device Apple ever made. It's got a USB-C port on it, guys. Turns out that port's plenty thin.
Yeah.
That was never the reason. Just, oh, man. That's a great one. So yeah, that was the Let Loose event. It was not really an event, but there was some interesting stuff about iPads. The new Pros look really cool and have a bunch of fancy features, and the prices haven't gone up for the configurations as they are sold, so that's good. The iPad Air, some nice updates, basically just a spec bump, but at least the camera's in a better place now. And again, no price increases, so I'm okay with that. I really appreciate the 10th generation dropping in price and getting the 9th generation out of there. And I might actually consider buying a 10th gen iPad now. At that price point, as the entry level to the iPad lineup, the 10th gen makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
I remember when they announced it, I talked about how much I didn't like it, how much I thought it was kind of stupid and people shouldn't buy it. I stand by that opinion at that time, but with this price drop, the thing makes a ton of sense, even with a slightly outdated processor. Honestly, pretty good deal. That paired with the $80 Pencil, that's not bad. It's not bad.
It's really not. My problem is not necessarily with the hardware of any of these products, but it's the the way Apple wants people to think you should use this hardware.
Yeah.
Specifically the iPad Pros, because the person I think the iPad Pro is going to be actually beneficial to is like a graphic design art, like an artist, graphic designer, that type of person. The problem is they also market it towards people making movies, people making music, people, in that type of sphere, which even for a beginner, like the software that's on the iPad is more beginner style software. Yes, it's technically their full software, yada, yada, whatever. But the abilities on the iPads do not rival what you can do on a desktop or on a laptop or a desktop computer on a Mac.
Nope.
And when you're spending as much money on these iPad Pros as you are, it makes way more sense to buy an M3 Mac Mini or a MacBook Pro for, $1,500 because you're going to be spending about $1,500 on an iPad Pro. Especially if you get the keyboard, you're going to be spending close to $2,000. It's like you can buy a dang good computer for $2,000.
Oh yeah,
and get full desktop software that you can actually utilize, that powerful chip inside. It's so. Like I said, I do think the iPad Pro, there is a space for it, just not for everyone that Apple thinks it should be for.
Yeah, I feel like the iPad lineup makes a lot of sense to a lot of people, right? Like the entry level 10th generation iPad. That sucker is just the best tablet computer that you can get, which makes it honestly kind of the best like personal content consumption device on the planet.
Yes.
The price is right. It's got plenty of power. The operating system is smooth, very user-friendly, and quite enjoyable to use. And the screen is really good. It's just great for consuming content. And you can get a cheap pencil cheap, $80. You can get an $80 pencil, get the cheaper pencil and do some art on it, and stuff like that. Totally works. It's good. It's good for that. Then you bump up to the iPad Air. Stupid name now, but okay, it exists. You've now got that in 2 different sizes, and I see that as basically everything that the base level iPad is, but for people that have a bigger chunk of disposable income to throw at it.
Yeah.
Right? They can get a bigger screen, makes it a better content consumption device. They can get better support for, fancy pencil stuff if they want to take their art to the next level, or if they are like a professional graphic designer, but they're not doing as much like color stuff. Right? They're not dealing with as much need for color accuracy as a like super pro graphic designer kind of thing. My level of art and graphic design, the 11-inch iPad Air, perfect. That thing would be absolutely fantastic for me. Like I would have no complaints with that paired with I guess the new pencil, because the 2nd gen Apple Pencil doesn't work with it. So, or actually, I guess it does work with it. It just can't charge from it, or there's some
weird.
kind of weird thing there. But yeah, so like that's kind of what that is. It's for people who want a content consumption device primarily, but still have just more disposable income. And then the iPad Pro, like you said, that's for your graphic designers, your people who are doing like the artists, right? The people who make their living off of digital art and design creation on this device. And frankly, I have an old iPad Pro. They're really good for that. Yeah. Like that is a fantastic use case for these devices. You can use it as your primary device for the creation process there. And then, you have a computer for touch up or social media work, marketing work, and all that stuff. Like it's a bit harder to do that stuff on the iPad. But honestly, a lot of that stuff you can also just do from your phone these days. Yeah. So the iPad's probably okay for that as well. I do think that if you're getting started with music production, that the iPad is actually a pretty good place to do that. There are some pretty good DAWs for iPad, Apple's DAWs included. GarageBand and Logic are both very good apps. And you can totally get started with music production on an iPad. You could honestly probably even go pro, given that Billie Eilish became a Grammy winner from GarageBand. Like there was a direct connection there.
Right.
made all this music in GarageBand, released an album, won a Grammy. That's how that went. So like it can be done. You can go pro with it. But if you really like, if you're recording a bunch of instruments, if you don't want to have just all of your, if you don't want to deal entirely with software instruments, then GarageBand is a good place to start, but it's not going to get you all the way. You know,
Right.
Logic is kind of the same way. You want to be able to plug into an interface. You want to be able to be in a recording studio, recording stuff, and a desktop is just going to give you a much better, more powerful experience with that.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, like, and then there's, then there's the movie making aspect. And I'm just like, no Hollywood production is ever going to use an iPad Pro as the main machine for their filming. That's just not going to happen.
No.
Apple, stop pretending that it will, which means that the iPad Pro ends up being a device that, yes, is used by graphic designers for their art and design work, can be used by some music producers if they want to, which they could, that's possible, but primarily ends up being a content consumption device for people that have extreme amounts of disposable income to throw at it. It's basically just a more expensive iPad Air in the end.
Because I mean,
So,
like if you think about it, the software, like you said, like for the music stuff, the same software, other than like their full-fledged like all that stuff, is on any iPad. You can get a 10th generation iPad with GarageBand that runs just the same as it would on an iPad Pro.
Yeah.
And you're spending way less money, and you can do all the same stuff.
You might, I guess, with the difference between the M2 and the M4, be able to, like, if you're the kind of person who wants to do a project in Logic on your iPad that has like 1,000 instruments in it, then maybe the M4 is going to be a better experience for you. But if that you,
Mac Mini.
Get a computer.
Yeah.
Get a Mac Mini, but get the Pro, like the M3 Pro Mac Mini.
Yeah.
Honestly, maybe look at a Mac Studio. What are you doing on an iPad? This is not the right place for you.
Seriously.
Trying to do it cheaply or something.
Yeah. It's like, I swear the reason for the M4, the whole purpose for the M4 being in the iPad is because it's more efficient than the M3 and the M2, so they could make it thinner. It's all bragging rights about how thin this thing is. That's it.
Yeah. You know, I was listening to, I think it was the Mac Break Weekly podcast, which is a Twit network podcast. And they have a couple guys on there that are really high in, like one in particular that's really into video, and like that's his job, is doing video production and stuff like that. And he loves the hardware on these iPads, but he always says the software is just not there. Nobody in their right mind is going to be using this software wise. And so he's been pushing, and I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but he's like, if you give me Mac OS on that iPad, I'd buy one in a heartbeat. But, and it makes sense, but Apple, I mean, I can't say they're never going to do something like that. iPad OS has gotten more and more similar to Mac OS. It's just so limited because it is a mobile software, and Apple is the one company I think that could get away with, like, I mean, Microsoft tried it with the Surface laptops and stuff, and they did a decent job with it. But I think Apple could, if they were to put a version of Mac OS that's more powerful than iPad OS, maybe a dumbed down version of Mac OS, but it could run somewhat desktop level apps, they would sell iPad Pros like crazy, I think.
It's a really tough situation, though, because everybody loves the hardware and user experience of the iPad, and then but the operating system setup and the actual apps available for it just can't give you the power of what's available on an actual desktop class operating system like Mac OS.
Right.
That's all totally valid critique, but Mac OS versus iPad OS, like, it's a much heavier OS.
Right.
And if you were to start dumbing Mac OS down to the point where it could run on hardware that, yes, it's the same processor and same SoC as you get in a MacBook, but it's in a very different enclosure. And that makes a big difference. Like anybody who's looked at the performance differences between an M2 MacBook Air and an M2 MacBook Pro knows having a fan helps a lot.
Absolutely.
Like the improved thermal design of the MacBook Pro means that, well, you get you get the immediate responsiveness of the M2 in the MacBook Air, the same as you do at the very beginning of the M2 MacBook Pro. If you do any extended workloads where you're running for more than like maybe 30 seconds to a minute, then the Air starts to throttle the performance of the chip down quite a bit because it gets hot, whereas the Pro can keep it cool. And so you get a lot more performance out of the Pro in longer workloads. And so the iPad is even worse than that because now it's so thin.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap. There's like nowhere. The heat dissipation for the iPad is just the back of the iPad. And they have to keep that down to a certain temperature. Otherwise, the FCC isn't going to let them sell it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it'll burn people. and like, you can prove that because people have modded iPad or MacBook Airs that have the M1 processor in them. People have modded those to the point where heat dissipation was possible to the case in a much more efficient way, and that made it run faster, but it also meant it heated up to like 50 degrees Celsius or something like that, which, yeah, that's hot enough to burn a person with extended contact, and it's a laptop. It's supposed to sit on your legs. That's not good. So they're definitely running into like just the laws of physics with an enclosure as thin as the MacBooks and with batteries with the iPads and with batteries as small as what's in the iPads versus in a MacBook or a MacBook Air.
Yeah.
And so it's like the hardware sounds like it's there, but I think that if we were to put Mac OS onto that hardware, we would pretty quickly discover there's a reason why Apple is still shipping it with iPad OS.
Yeah.
iPad OS is much lighter weight, and the fact that the apps aren't as powerful is probably intentional. Because if they were as powerful, you would discover pretty quickly that the user experience is really crap on a device that thin. So there's probably a reason for it. I suspect it has to do with heat dissipation and the laws of physics. And what the real problem is Apple's marketing. Like, as much as anything else, it's the fact that Apple keeps insisting that the iPad is like a pro-level computer.
Yeah, no.
When what it actually is mainly a content consumption device that also happens to be really good for graphic design.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what the iPad is. And it is great at both of those things, unmatched by anything else at both of those things. And so if that's your use case, there's an iPad for you at every price point. And that's pretty great. I like the iPad lineup. I just wish that Apple's marketing department would take a nap.
No, that's not going to happen.
I'm aware.
No.
I've been wishing that for many years at this point.
Yes.
It's been a while.
Now that actually leads me to a question that I thought of this week is, who wants this thin of an iPad? Besides
his name
besides
is
Tim Cook.
His name is Johnny Ive,
or Johnny
and
Ive, yeah.
he doesn't work at Apple anymore. But his fingers, you can see his lingering touch everywhere in the company.
Because this comes up anytime any company makes something so thin, like this. It's like, why nobody's asking for thinner products? Literally everyone is asking for longer battery life. And that, in most cases, does require not super... yes, this does have the same battery life as the previous generation, which is great because it is less battery, so the chip is more efficient because it has to be because it's so thin, and to get that battery life. But it's like, if you would have left it as thick as the previous generation with that big a battery, that would have added 5 hours of battery life that people actually want. It's like, it was already really thin.
Like, to be clear, for the Pro level device, that's what they should have done. Yeah. They should have this year announced the iPad Pros, the exact same form factor as last year, and been like, hey, you get 5 hours of 50% more battery life because of the efficiency gains with the processor and, like all that stuff. It's just, man, check out how awesome this thing is as a pro device.
Yeah.
Pros would have loved that. And then next year, they update the iPad Air and they're all like, it's the new thinnest product that Apple has ever made. It's basically last year's iPad Pro, but instead of giving you 5 extra hours of battery life, you get the same battery life as the outgoing iPad Air, but
it's thin.
Look at it. It's so thin. It's in air. It like floats. And the commercials basically write themselves for that thing. And I feel like there was definitely some missed opportunities here. I don't necessarily disagree with everything because, once again, the primary use case for an iPad is content consumption.
Right.
The iPad Pro is not, generally speaking, actually for professionals. It's for people who would like to consume content and have a lot of disposable income. That's who it's for. And so they made it thin and light so that those people would have a lighter device for content consumption. I get that. You're holding the iPad up like a book or like a piece of, like, a newspaper or something like that. The thing being lighter is great. So there's definitely like a perspective from which it makes sense. It's just not the perspective that Apple is marketing, Like, from the perspective of this device, all of them, the Air, the regular iPad, the Pro, the Mini, all of them are content consumption devices. That's their main use case. From that perspective, the Pro is just the best one because it is super efficient and thin and lighter than all the rest of them. Is it the best for professional use cases? No. The best for professional use cases would have been the same size as the last generation and had a bigger battery and more efficient chip, so even more battery life.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, that's how that would have gone. But that's not what the iPad is. Every time Apple updates the iPad, there's a whole bunch of YouTube videos are like, is it finally the Pro device that Apple's marketing? No,
it's not.
It's never going to be that. Guys, it's a content consumption device. That's what it's been since 2010. It's not changing. Main purpose of this device is for like people to watch Netflix and read books and like YouTube stuff, and that's what it's for, man. And then you make FaceTime calls with the grandkids and you check your stocks, and that's the iPad, guys. And then for a small subset of you, yes, buy a pencil, make some amazing art. That's the entire user base of the iPad. It's not that art.
Yeah. I did just think of another question. So a lot of people complain, like, I love the sizes of these. I like the 11-inch. I like the 13-inch. It's great for consumption. And a lot of people that do consume entertainment on these products take them on an airplane. And I've heard that people complain that if they have them set up on a tray table, if the person in front of them happens to lean back, it's just going to scrunch a little bit. And now that these iPads are as thin as they are, is that going to break?
Fold in half.
Whoops.
Apple's first foldable.
No, well, I mean, that was going to be proven by Jerry everything anyways.
I mean, but here's the best part. They're OLED display panels now, so actually they might survive.
Yeah, the display might survive. The back of it won't.
The glass won't, but the display might.
Oh, somebody needs to test this. Somebody needs to take an iPad on a plane and try this out, because I am genuinely curious to see if this new iPad Pro would survive that.
Oh yeah.
Man.
There
was
you go,
quite
Wes.
the event.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I'm assuming everyone's done talking about this here, so I'll go ahead and move on.
We've talked about everything they talked about at the event, and also, again, re-described the entire function of the iPad, because every time Apple updates the iPad, everybody loses sight of this. Ignore Apple's marketing, folks. Just ignore it. It's all fake. None of it's real. None of it is real. Just don't. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I guess you could say that for a lot of marketing, but
I mean, you can, but Apple is worse than most, I feel like.
Yeah, and they've gotten worse over the years too. It's just ridiculous.
All right, we're going to move on to some Google news here. Looks like we're going to be talking about the Pixel 8a.
Yeah, so like you said, where it was the calm before the storm. This was also, I can't remember if this was announced on Tuesday or Wednesday or Monday. I don't know what day this was. It was announced one of these days, along
Yeah.
with literally everything else. And so it's interesting. This is a great device. So I'm going to go over the specs really quick. It's got the Google Tensor G3 chip in it. It's got an OLED display at 120 hertz versus the 7A had a 90 hertz display. So 120 hertz, that is adaptive refresh rate as well. Although it does not come out of the box that way. It comes out of the box, I think, set at 90, or either 60 or 90. You do have to go into settings and change it to 120 hertz. So do that when you buy this. It's a 6.1 inch display. It's got 8 gigs of RAM. It comes in with 128 gigs or 256 gigs of storage. It's got a 4,492 milliamp hour battery, 18 watt wired charging, and 7.5 watt wireless charging. So not the fastest on wireless, but it does have wireless charging available, which is nice. It's launching obviously with Android 14. The cameras on it are the same as the 7A cameras, which are perfectly fine. It's not as high, not quite as good as sensors as what's on the 8 and 8 Pro, but it's more than usable. Like, these are great cameras. It's a Google phone. They're going to have good quality cameras. Like last year in Marquez Brownlee's blind picture contest, like phone camera contest, the Pixel 7a is what won overall. And so this has the same sensors as that, so you're going to be fine. They did upgrade this one with Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3. It is IP67 rated for water and dust resistance, and it comes in 4 different colors: obsidian, also known as black; porcelain, also known as an off-white color; bay, which is a blue color, which is actually a really pretty blue.
I like
and
that
then
one. Yeah.
aloe, which is a green color, but it's not the green you're thinking of when you think of aloe. This is more of a lime green, like quite bright green color. It's not a bad looking green, but I wouldn't call it aloe. I do find it an interesting name for how bright it is. And it starts at $500, which is a great price if you also didn't Google have your, Pixel 8 on sale for $550 the same day you launched this phone, which they did.
Yep.
It was really funny.
Man.
So it, like, people have been like, "Okay, do I recommend the 8A over the 8 because of the price?" And it's like, well, if you can only find the Pixel 8 at full price, which is $700, $699, $650, something like that, then yes, this one is great. If you can find the Pixel 8 at $550, then no, buy the 8. It's just like, come on, Google. You should have canceled that sale before you launching this phone. But overall, the reviews on this thing are excellent because, it's a Pixel phone. The A series has always been really good, especially for the price. They did change the design on it a little bit. The corners are a little more rounded. Like if you were to look at the 7A to this one or the 8 to this one, all 4 corners are, like, it's just a little more prominent on how round the device is. And I think it looks fine. It's just it's noticeable if you're comparing. If you just look at it by itself, you may not notice it, but if you actually compare, then you'll see it. But overall, it's a Pixel phone. It's an A series Pixel phone. It's a great phone. It's going to be a great phone. You can pre-order it right now. It goes on sale later this week. I think on the 14th is when it is supposed to be shipped, and in stores in certain places. But yeah, that's that's the Pixel 8a. There's really not a whole lot, to really talk about. It's a Pixel phone. It's an A series Pixel phone, and it's spec bumped, better screen, better processor, slightly different design. $500, and then the 200. That's for the 128 gig. The 256 gig is conveniently only $60 more, not
That's
$100
not too bad.
like most companies, even Google. Like if you go from actually on the regular flagships, they might only, I don't know if they're $100. Anyways, most companies, if you want more storage, generally $100 or more for more storage. $60, so that's not bad. And 128 gigs is usually going to be fine for most people, but
Yeah.
256 for only $60 more is not a bad deal at all. So that is the Pixel 8a, and interestingly enough, they did not announce it at Google I/O, which is the next topic, is tomorrow as we record, because we have to record the day before every event, because that's just how it has to be.
It's how we do this.
Yes.
Last week we
This
recorded
is
the
a
day before the
requirement.
iPad thing. Today we're recording the day before I/O, and I'm sure we'll record the day before WWDC, because again,
WWDC
that's
is
what
on
we
a Tuesday.
do.
Yep.
Yep.
So, by the way, well, you'll be listening to this. You already will know what happened at I/O. I'm just going to tell you right now, AI. That's what happened at I/O.
Hey, you got it.
Yeah.
So
Bingo.
there you go. I am curious to see what they do in Android when it comes to this AI stuff. If like with Gemini and all that stuff, I think it'll be interesting, especially with other stuff that we're going to talk about later that has been announced this past week from other companies. So I'm definitely going to pay attention to. Obviously, I'm going to pay attention, but I'm very curious. So,
Yeah.
But like I said, listener, as you're listening to this, you already know, most likely, unless you're waiting for us to tell you. Which, okay, good for you.
Hey,
we'll
tell you next week.
next
And we
week.
will. We'll tell you next week. All right. We'll go ahead and move on. Hey, I actually have some Microsoft news. I try to look through some things that might be relevant, and it's not just, Windows 11 beta stuff.
Well, and I'm sure it's great news, right? Like this is great news.
Oh,
Surely. We've been waiting so long for some Microsoft news, so it's got to be good.
Dear listener, if you've been thinking about going and jumping ship to Windows 11, or if you're already there, I feel like I wanted to report this because I just want you to aware. So Microsoft may soon bring ads. Oh, wait, I mean widgets to the Windows 11 start menu.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you remember when Windows 10 launched, they tried to bring all of the things they thought were good to Windows 8 and put it in the start menu of Windows 10. So widgets.
And they've been slowly walking that back ever since.
They were slowly walking it back. Like it's still kind of there, but it's not as dominant. Like you can still do stuff, but it's start menu became, that. Well, so on this article here, I've got from Thurrott.com. Want to make sure they said that the new feature, we're going to call it a feature. I guess we'll call it the start menu extensible with widget-like adaptation cards. That's the long thing we'll say. This was from an X user, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, user Albacore, who managed to show the experience and could work using data from Windows 11 widgets in the start menu. They also showed that Microsoft has been using widget boards on Windows 11 to promote news content from its, Microsoft Start, formerly MSN Portal. So, which means you may see that the start menu companions is what they call it, as another opportunity to show MSN content or quote unquote ads for Microsoft services.
I'd like to nominate Start Menu Companions as another possible worst tech name.
Put it down. Let's put it down because, yep. Trust me, when I was reading these names, I'm like, this is a goldmine for horrible names.
Oh my God.
Are you putting it on the list?
I am.
Okay, put it on the list.
I mean, we're only in May,
companion.
and this list is already so long.
Oh, dude. It is. Oh, tech names.
Oh,
the gift that keeps on giving.
So, your listener, just wanted to let I don't use Windows 11. Apparently, my computers can't do. I haven't updated my PC forever, so I can't get Windows 11.
Probably for
the
better.
requirements. Yeah,
I'm like, I am not motivated to update my computer.
Right.
Based off
and
of
here's the thing.
Microsoft's whole deal. Nope.
I have a feeling that they're going to roll it back to Windows 10 because still people are using Windows 10. So I have expect it to be coming soon to Windows 10. Now, that's just me saying that out loud. That's not confirmation of anything. I'm just throwing that out there. But I wanted to make people aware that, yes, widgets are coming, which could also mean ads to sell you Candy Crush or whatever they decide to put on there. So, or allow other software developers to put ads in there to make more money for Windows. Because, listener, Windows is not making as much money as they used to. So,
what are the odds?
You know, you mentioned Candy Crush. That's not going to be an ad for Candy Crush. It's just going to be a giant icon. Hey, play the already installed Candy Crush because it's going to be there.
Yep. No longer is this malware. We own this. So
this is a feature, not a bug.
Right. Exactly. So good news, bad news. What I guess you could look at it many different ways, but I just wanted to make it aware and throw it out there in case you're a Windows 11 user and all of a sudden you're getting ads in your start menu. There you go. You know what's happening. Okay, we're going to go over to some general tech news. We got GPT-4o. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, actually, yes. So OpenAI had an actual event, live with an audience and someone on stage. This was an actual event. Caleb,
wow.
You should be happy about this. Well, at least the fact that it was, an actual event. But they announced GPT-4o, which not 4.0 or 4.0, like, most people would think, no, 4, the letter O. Because O stands for Omni, basically meaning that this is, like, they're referring to the large language model as being able to handle text, speech, and video all in one. And that's actually pretty cool. Like, they were showing off a lot of interesting features that this can do. And one of the cooler things that they were showcasing with this new version of GPT. ChatGPT is a product within. It's weird. Again, naming is fun. But one of the features in this is being able to more or less have a conversation with the ChatGPT bot, and you can, like, they actually gave an example of where, like, ChatGPT is answering a question, but you're like, wait a minute, you can interrupt, and it will stop and listen to what you're saying, and then, change what its answer is, like having a real conversation with a person, more or less. I mean, obviously, it's still different. It's still a chat bot type thing, but it's more I don't want to say person-like. It's just better, easier interaction, I should say. But they also have updated the way it can look at pictures or videos and analyze what's on there and tell you different things about what you're looking at. And, just a lot of new updated features. I mean, nothing really new. A lot of the stuff you could do in the past is just better versions of that. That's basically where this form of AI, as they like to call it, is at this point. It's just, we've got all the features. It's just a matter of making it easier to use for the general person. Now, not all of the GPT-4o stuff is going to be coming to everyone. Like, it's not going to be quite, like, not all the features are there for, like, their free versions, but if you're on their paid version, you can get all the stuff right away. They're trying to limit it right now just so they can test it out a little more with more people, but not just the general public quite yet. So the paid subscribers that use OpenAI's premium version of ChatGPT will be getting GPT-4o here shortly, and then some of the features will start to roll out to the free version later on. But I thought it was it's really good timing on their part, because they had to get out ahead of whatever Google is going to be announcing tomorrow at I/O, because we all know that Google is going to be talking about a lot of this same stuff with Gemini and all their AI features and whatnot, and it's all going to be built into Android, more or less, probably. So OpenAI had to get out there and showcase what they can do. And I think I actually really love that there's competition in this space, because it's forcing, I mean, not that Google was not giving us everything, but it's just forcing them to be competitive, for lack of a better term. That's what it is. And I love it, because it just means better products for us as consumers. And it's great. I do wish that there were more people in this sphere other than OpenAI and Google. Apple is probably going to be doing stuff in here, but it's still rumored that they're going to be using someone else's stuff. So who knows? There's going to be some of their own stuff in there, but
At this point, it's looking an awful lot like the stuff that OpenAI just announced for ChatGPT is what's going to end up in iOS.
Yeah.
So we'll find out in a couple of weeks, but yeah.
But again, I am still glad that there are at least the two main companies doing this to help push each other to make better products for us. And the other nice thing is both of these companies do, at least on the outside, really seem to care about AI safety and, trying to make it not, try to take over the world one day. Not that that will happen, but you never know. And trying to make it so it's relatively easy to tell when something is AI generated and whatnot. So I like that. So with both companies putting that, it's good. And then when Apple gets into the game, they're going to be pushing that even harder, because that's their whole shtick, is privacy and all that fun stuff. So, but yeah, OpenAI, they had, if you want to learn more, there's a YouTube video of the event. It's not super long. It's around 25-30 minutes, but they showcase everything. They have examples of everything being done. It was pretty cool. So there you go. That's the GPT-4o event-ish thing, something.
Yes. Good. The next topic in this general tech discussion here, having internet access is actually a good thing overall.
Yeah, so this was something I just learned about today. I thought this was really interesting. So the Oxford Internet Institute, which is part of the University of Oxford, obviously, they've been doing a study about people that have internet access and linking that to the well-being of the person. So general overall happiness, more or less, and correlating that with having internet and using the internet and stuff like that. And the thing I really like about this study is it says here on their article that they are talking about this, that they studied over 2 million individuals' psychological well-being from 2006 to 2021 across 168 countries in relation to internet use and psychological well-being. And that, so it's a really long study, which is impressive. Mm-hmm. And they had, like they said, a wide variety of countries. And this was 2 million. It says 2 million individuals aged 15 to 99 in 168 countries, including Latin America, Asia, and Africa. So not just, your typical U.S., North America, Europe type countries. Like, this was all over the place. A lot of diversity, a lot of different age ranges, a lot of people, and over a long period of time. And they have come to the conclusion, they said 84.9% of associations between internet connectivity and well-being were positive and statistically significant. So basically 85% of these people said having internet access and using the internet on a regular basis proved to be a positive thing in their life. Now, they did mention how right around 5%, I think it was 4.9% says the researchers found that 4.9% of associations linking internet use and community well-being were negative, with most of those observed among young women aged 15 to 24 years of age, which makes a lot of sense. That's kind of a very significant time in anybody's life, but especially young women. And if they're on social media, I understand how that can be a very tough and unhappy time, So
Yep.
that makes sense. But even then, it was still 4.9%, less than 5% of people had a negative or overall negative experience with that. So it was a really interesting study. Listener, I will link this in the show notes if you want to look at it yourself. But I did find it very interesting and informative about how overall having the access to the internet is a very good thing, which, you could kind of say, yes, that makes sense. But some people would also argue that the internet has been the downfall of people. And I'm like, oh, well, you are old. You need to go to bed.
Go take a nap.
Yeah. But I just, it was really interesting. Really interesting article to read. But yeah, I will link it in the show notes for if you are interested to get a little more detail on it than what I just said. I just gave kind of an overview of it, but yeah. There you go. Internet.
Yep.
It's a good thing most of the time.
It's a good thing. Big responsibility, right? What is the quote? Spider-Man quote.
With great response.
There it is.
With great powers comes
great
responsibility.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is. I kept thinking great responsibility. I'm like, that's not the quote, but it kept coming in my head. So, okay, we're going to go ahead and move into some gaming news here. We're going to start off here with the first topic. Gamma PS1 emulator launches on iOS from Benjamin Stark, a.k.a. Zod TTD.
Yep. That's pretty much that's the entire headline, listener. The thing of note is that this is the second high-profile emulator to launch since Apple has stopped being an idiot about emulators on the App Store. And so it's a PlayStation 1 emulator. So any original PlayStation games that you want to play, there's a really quite large archive or library of very excellent games for the original PlayStation. So now you can play those on your iPhone. And the one thing that I think is kind of funny is that the other emulator that launched with all the Nintendo stuff is Delta, which is a letter from the Greek alphabet. You may be aware, listener. Gamma is also a letter from the Greek alphabet. So I don't know if they were like chatting with each other and we're all like, hey, we should just make this a thing that all of the emulators on iOS are going to have Greek alphabet names or whatever. But there you go. Gamma PS1 emulator. I have it open right now. I'm about to launch Diablo. So it is worth noting that while neither of these emulators are they can't have in-app purchases and they are free because that's what Apple requires for these things. Delta does not track you really at all, doesn't serve you ads, doesn't do anything of the nature, whereas Gamma does have ads and some tracking. So it's not quite as good as Delta is what I'm saying,
right.
But it's there.
It's good information to know.
And I will now just sign off from the rest of the podcast because I'm going to be playing Diablo.
All right, let's go ahead and move to the next topic here. Listener, apparently this has exploded all week, and it's on all news headlines and everything. So Xbox is shutting down some studios.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at what this actually is.
But actually, though, so weird.
But let's actually look into this because I feel like we could have a better discussion, and instead of this freaking sucks, we could actually kind of look at this a little more.
First it kind of does freaking suck, though. Just
first off, no one losing jobs. Yes, anyone that loses a job, this sucks. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So we have 4 of the studios from the Bethesda ZeniMax umbrella here. The ones that were affected was Arcane Austin, the Tango Gameworks, Alpha Dog Studios, and Roundhouse Games. So let's start off with Arcane Austin. Arcane Austin, their most recent game was Redfall. That one did not do so well.
Kind of maybe not surprising they got closed. Still dumb, because the reason Redfall sucked is because they were forced to make it by executives that didn't care about making a good game. They just wanted a live service game. So
Yeah. I
kind
mean,
of not the dev's fault there.
If I had a guess here, this is just me as I've been reading more into these here. What had happened, I know from what I was reading and understanding is before Microsoft bought Bethesda, ZeniMax was not making a lot of money. They were overstaffed. They were trying to chase these trends. That's why Redfall became something. That's why they were forced to make Redfall. A lot of these things were happening. So when Microsoft bought them, they kind of help extend it to be like, here, just from what I've gathered, and this is coming from whatnot, like Microsoft, when they're like, oh, you're working on a game? Okay, we're going to let you do your thing because we trust you. You're Arcane Studios. Do your thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think, yeah, this sucks. It does. So if you were, which also comes this, so they did lay off a bunch of people there. They have also brought some of them into the fold of other. They're shutting down the studio and they're moving people and also doing layoffs, moving people to other Bethesda stuff. If you were someone that purchased the Redfall, what's called the Bite Back upgrade, which was supposed to add 2 new characters, another new content, you will be able to get your money back because they're literally just axing that whole thing. They're just like, look, Redfall's in this state, done. We're going to leave it there. We're not adding to it. So there is a sign up. If you go to the Redfall website, you can sign up to get your money back for purchasing the Bite Back edition. So that is there if you were one that did buy that on there. So the next studio on here with Arcane Austin, let's see, we're going to move to Alpha Dog Studios. This one is also going to be closed. This is actually the studio that created Mighty Doom.
Yeah, another situation where it's all like, hey, make a AAA game for mobile devices. And I'm pretty confident that none of the actual, like, artists and developers at the studio were like, oh, this is a great concept. We should totally do this thing. I think they were just like, dictated to from above and kind of forced to do it. And then the game kind of sucked and nobody really played it. And now the studio's getting shut down. Once again, not the studio's fault, not the developer's fault. But are any of the executives going to be fired? Probably not.
Yeah. So Mighty Doom will also, they call it the Sunset, will be on August 7th. And will be turning off the ability for players to make any purchases to the game. So, okay. Next one is Roundhouse Games. They're basically shutting the studio down, but they're taking everybody here and just moving everybody over to the ZeniMax Online Studio.
Yeah, this one is flipping weird. Because, like, at least with the other ones, you could point to a recent high-profile failure and be like, well, this is why you're getting shut down. Whereas, aren't these the guys that made, critically acclaimed indie darling that just recently launched on PlayStation 5, Hi-Fi Rush?
No,
Who
not
that?
Roundhouse. That was Tango.
That was Tango. Okay. So we're getting
Roundhouse, from what I was looking at, they were kind of more of a support studio.
Yeah, Roundhouse helped with Redfall.
Yeah, they were kind of a support helping back and forth. So they just moved all them into ZeniMax Online. So.
Yeah. Okay. So no, it's So
Tango Gameworks is the actually Japanese studio. They did Hi-Fi Rush, but they were also critically acclaimed for what's that game? The horror game. Oh my goodness, 2 of them.
I can't remember.
I mean, wow. Caleb should know this. Horror is his absolute favorite genre of game.
I play horror games. Look, I'm playing Diablo right now. It's kind of a horror game.
Not Evil with it. My goodness. It was well received. A lot of people really enjoyed these games. And after this is terrible information. I'm trying to think of after the main head person from Tango left after the release of Hi-Fi Rush. He was done. He wanted to do his own thing, so he actually left the studio. And then from the sounds of it, what they were talking about is they wanted to try to do a Hi-Fi Rush 2, but I said no, which is weird. This one is very surprising. Like Caleb said, They won awards for this game.
Critically acclaimed, extremely well-selling indie darling that just recently launched to rave reviews on PlayStation. And they're shutting down the studio that what? So if Hi-Fi Rush doesn't guarantee your studio's not going to get shuttered by these giant conglomerates.
Yeah.
WTF. This is basically like, I actually watched a video where somebody made this observation. They were basically like, this is pretty much just a death knell for Ninja Theory. Doesn't matter how well Hellblade 2 performs, evidently, they're probably just going to get killed. Like, for no reason. Like, what the heck? This is such a... what? Microsoft, what are you doing? What?
Well, we'll see. We'll see what they do. I mean, it's either that or they get spun off independent, or I don't know. I mean, they did that with Toys for Bob, and I don't know.
Ninja Theory's done that before, like...
Yeah.
So maybe they'll manage to survive, but... I don't know, man.
No, I don't know. I mean, let's be real. This sucks. It does overall. Another something that I was listening to another podcast. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they were thinking that this is the reasoning for this is where Satya Nadella told Phil they can't have any more money and need to find more money elsewhere in the whole Microsoft gaming quote unquote there. And so this is Phil trying to find other money for other projects or other things or something, which interesting, but I don't know, just something to kind of throw out there. So sucks so bad, but also there is on top of this, the next day we're talking about that Xbox is considering more layoffs, but this will be on the Xbox side of the division, and a possible Game Pass price increase.
Yep.
But that's just, let's be real, this is just a lot of assumptions. There is no confirmed thing here, but this is just kind of one of those, what they're thinking. So just kind of making it aware what's happening with everything. Because obviously this is pretty big. There's going to be lots of, even if you're not in gaming news, this is news because obviously they bought Activision, they bought Bethesda with all this money. It's going to be another news too. So we'll see what happens. Yep. This is just possible things that are happening, and they're probably getting a lot of this done because of the new year. Their new fiscal year is coming up, so they're trying to get all that taken care of. Next, this is something that I'm interested in. I don't know if it's something I will use, but this is the big mobile store they were talking about. They're set to launch this mobile store in July.
Oh,
so Sarah, Sarah Bond, she had revealed that, so she was on the she had gone out and talked to Bloomberg on the technology summit, and they were talking about it, and she had come out and said that the mobile store will actually be on the web in July. So it's a web-based thing at the moment to get it launched, to get it going. And then once they get everything worked out they didn't come out and say Apple and Google, but other platforms. Once they get that all taken care of.
They could launch it on Android right away because you can technically already do that.
That's true.
So they're still working that out and with all the legal stuff. And I'm sure they're waiting for the EU to open up Apple and more and let them do that more and all that stuff. But so the big store that they want to launch, they're going to try and launch it web-based in July, and then from there take steps to do more. So it'll be interesting to see how they do this, how this works. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it'll be time will tell. So I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on a web-based store like this? I don't know.
I am very confused about what they're really hoping to accomplish, but I'm interested to see where it goes. Like, I'm like, yeah, they can launch their own app store with a bunch of mobile games on it. Is that going to make their mobile games more popular? No,
I don't know. I don't know.
Is this going to work? I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
I mean, they see something we don't.
They see what they think is going to bring in more money, when in reality, not having these. I mean, if they don't put these games, like if they were to take them off of the Play Store and App Store, then it's not going to make them money. It's going to lose them money.
I mean, they come out and they talk about this. So this is in quotes. It says they want accessible across all devices, all countries, no matter what, independent of policies of closed ecosystems. This store truly goes across devices, is what they said.
Okay, so yeah, it would have to be web-based then.
Mm-hmm.
So how does it work with Apple? Like, how do you get the apps onto? Maybe you're just going to play everything in the browser. Maybe this is just going to be like all the Flash browser games that we played when we were kids and stuff like that. That's what we're going back to maybe here. Maybe that's all this is. Newgrounds or something.
So I guess we'll see. We'll see what they're doing. I mean, obviously they've got some analytics and something they're chasing. I guess we'll just have to see what the picture is, the full picture of this, because I don't know.
I mean, either way, once it launches, I'm sure you'll see an ad for it in Windows 11 Start menu.
I don't know, and I don't know, and who knows? Maybe I have a feeling we'll find out a lot more come June 9th when they do their games event. I'm sure they're going to want to do their Game Pass. You know what's coming to Game Pass. If there's a new tier of Game Pass, the new mobile store, I'm sure they're going to want to start promoting that. You know, a month ahead of time. So I'm sure more news will come out about this. But just wanted to come out and say that hey, July is the first step, I guess, to this. So we'll see how well it goes. I don't know. I'm interested to see if this shakes anything up. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't think it's going to be for me, though, because obviously I'm in the ecosystem already. So we'll see. It'd be interesting. We could get Landon finally on something and we could play games together. We'll be like, Landon, here, you just go online. We'll play Sea of Thieves. See?
That still requires me to actually have a want to spend money on these games.
True.
That's not there.
We'll see.
Having the accessibility is not the problem.
It's the want. It's the desire.
True. But it would be fun. But yeah, that's pretty much all the gaming news that we have this week. I have a feeling unless more studios and stuff shut down, probably won't have as big of gaming news until we'll just call it E3 week, just because that's easier to say.
Couple of weeks, beginning of June.
I know, like
there'll be stuff.
We were discussing Nintendo, they're going to have their own little thing around that time. PlayStation will have their State of Play or whatever they have. Microsoft already announced they're having their big thing, obviously that, and COD Blops, whatever the next one is. So we'll see. We'll see what with all this and what's happening. All right. I think that's everything for the episode, listener, unless Landon's got one more thing.
Nope.
No. I guess having two things last week covered for this week. How's that?
That covered me for a while. Yeah.
Covered you for a minute.
There you go.
All right, dear listener. Hey, we appreciate you listening. Appreciate you all the way through listening and for our rants and all this fun stuff that we do. Especially Caleb. Let's talk about Intel, shall we?
No, I'm good.
He's totally distracted right now playing Diablo. All right, I'm going to end this episode. Listener, if you want to get a hold of us, you can over at our social media platforms. You can also get a hold of us at callingallplatforms.com. You can check out our YouTube channel that maybe this year might get a new video. We'll let you know. Maybe it's something about Diablo PS1 emulator on iOS from Benjamin Stark.
Who knows?
And how great and wonderful it is.
Stay a while and listen.
All right, dear listener. Have a good week.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Calling All Platforms is a production of Supporter Sound Studios. To learn more about how you can support the podcast, go to www.patreon.com/callingallplatforms.